Kick it for me one time.
What is the world coming to?
Welcome to Top Level, the show that gets South Africa talking, with your host, Felicia Mabuza Sattel.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Great to be here this afternoon.
Oh boy, we're going to talk today. Someone once said, if you are hard on yourself, life will be easy. If you are easy on yourself, life will be hard. This sets the tone for our program tonight. It's a unique program about motivation, entrepreneurship, and success. It is a story of rags to riches, of bankruptcy to millionaire, through self-education to become a millionaire. We'll hear tonight. Tonight, we will also share his vision with South Africa as he lifts our spirits in times of doubt, change, and yet challenging time. Don't you think so, Reverend Macaulay?
I think it's a great time, a great challenging opportunity.
You also have to stand up. Everybody stands up when they talk to me, you know.
I'm up,
Okay.
yes. I just didn't want to stand taller than you. That's all.
Oh, tell me about the times.
Well, I think this is the greatest times of South Africa. You know, in times of change, it's great opportunity. Someone said Goliath is so big, you can't defeat him. I believe we should say he's so big we can't miss him.
That deserves an applause. Formal education will get you a job. Self-education will get you a fortune. This is how our guest tonight made it. Reverend Macaulay, you know what? I saw you had some rhythm in you. I'm going to come to Rhema Church now. See, y'all have rhythm.
That's where we got it from you.
But I tell you what, I'd like you to just quickly tell us about Mr. Peter Daniels.
Well, first of all, that we met over a few years back, and he's one of the most successful men when it comes to training people into being quality leaders, into getting to a place where they can function successfully independent of other people. One of our political leaders the other day said this to me. He said, true liberation for our black businessmen can only come when they can function successfully independently of white businessmen. And so we really believe at this particular time that that's important. Peter Daniels, in over 130 or so countries around the world, has business interests. He's one of the most successful men in the field that he operates in the world today. Great teacher, communicator, and he wants to be part of the solution for South Africa.
That's what we're interested in.
And he wants to get to the rural people. He wants to train them to where they can function successfully and they can become what God wants them to become.
Self-sufficient. Thank you. When you came to South Africa, they said, welcome to South Africa. And you say, South Africa, welcome to the real world. What do you mean by that?
Well, very simply, I mean that the world that you knew before you had the sanctions has changed. And the sanctions, in a sense, protected you from much of the competition that the world has progressed into. We are facing, within the next 5 years, a trade war. And I believe it'll be the greatest trade war in the history of the human race. And South Africa somehow has to fit into that and not only be better than anyone else, but be outstanding, because the whole world is searching for business people to come and invest in their country. So I believe that South Africa has a unique challenge within the world economics.
We're going to be talking tonight about your books, one of which obviously I like very much, How to Be Motivated at All Times. We need that motivation right now in South Africa with so many people demotivated by a number of circumstances. And the other ones are?
The other one is How to Be Happy Though Rich and How to Reach Your Life Goals.
How can you be happy and rich? Rich people are always staying up all night and miserable.
Well, you certainly can be, and I would like to maybe demonstrate how that is possible.
Okay. One thing that Reverend Macaulay said, he said, you also talk about leadership. Where did you come from? How can a dropout become a leader? How can a dropout become rich? Tell us your story, please.
Well, first of all, I would have to go back to my childhood I came from a third-generation welfare recipient family. I had 4 fathers and 2 mothers, and most of my relatives had free board and lodgings with King George VI. That meant they were in jail. None of my family had made a mark in anything, and I went along to my first school and they thought I had brain damage, and they were going to put me in a class with brain-damaged children, until finally one teacher came along called Miss Phillips. I've often thought that she could kickstart a jumbo jet. Miss Phillips said, he's not brain damaged, he's just plain stupid. And for 3 years she punched me, she kicked me, she slapped me, she didn't get any sense in me or out of me, and she used to get me by the chin and rattle my teeth and say, Peter Daniels, you're a bad, bad boy, and you're never going to amount to anything. And that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And of course I had to contend with rejection. My mother told me in latter years that she tried to abort me 4 times and I wouldn't go. And so I came from that kind of background. I'd had a fight on every street corner. I wanted to be flyweight boxing champion of the world. And then at 26 years of age, I was virtually illiterate and my life changed.
You're a bricklayer.
That's correct.
From bricklayer to millionaire. How did you educate yourself?
Well, after having this incredible change in my life at a Billy Graham crusade, I suddenly realized that I was equal with all men before God, and I reasoned that if I was equal with all men before God, I no need to accept inequality with anybody. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone to teach me. And I didn't know anyone in business. And our family, I've chased it back since then, for 500 years were serfs and servants. And so I realized that I had to become a pragmatist. I didn't even know the word at that time, but I bought 3 dictionaries, and I put one in the bathroom, one next to my bed, and one in my excuse for a motor car, which had been rolled 3 times and had all the windows out of it. And I used to point to words and get people to repeat the words, and then I would check with several other people to make sure they told me the truth. And then I went through those dictionaries frontwards and then backwards, and then by then I'd read about Sir Winston Churchill when he mobilized the English language and sent it into battle on behalf of a nation in great peril. And so I spoke into a tape recorder for 5 years just so that I could articulate words. And then by then I'd read about Shakespeare. He said, some people are born into greatness and others have it thrust upon them. And so I wanted...
So was greatness thrust upon you?
Yes, so I wanted to see whether it was possible for an ordinary person who was illiterate at 26, who'd never had an opportunity in life, whose background was poverty and deprivation, whether it was possible to be great. And so I read 1,500 autobiographies, and on a big graph paper, I plotted the strengths and weaknesses of each person to try and find out what made the great great. And then I went to the libraries, which were empty. There's nobody there. Nobody goes to the libraries anymore. And I studied law, accountancy, philosophy, theology, modern ancient history, politics, and economics. And I found the brain was like a muscle and it could be developed.
Wow. You know, the thing about the autobiographies reminds me of a little story I normally use. I always say that if you try to hang around rich people or try to get to where they are, take pictures with them and be with them somehow, by osmosis, you'll also somehow be successful. That's what I believe. When we come back, we're going to get some questions from the audience. I know the people of South Africa are just ready to ask you how, what, why, when we come back. We are talking to Mr. Peter Daniels, who is described as an inspiring success. And guess where he's from? Australia, not America. So don't accuse me of always bringing Americans on this program. But let's hear from the people. What do they want to ask about Mr. Daniels, his greatness, and how he got there? Let me start up here.
Hi, Felicia.
Kind of?
Goed, en jy?
Dankie.
I think what Mr. Daniels has told us here
is in line with something which Michael Novak once said. I'm sure he's heard of his works as well, one of the great American philosophers, cum economists, who said that the true source of the wealth of nations lies in human creativity. It's not necessarily how much gold you have or how many mines you have, etc. And in South Africa, I believe we have such an enormous wealth of creativity that is just waiting to be unlocked. And I'd like to hear his comment about what we're trying to do. For instance, at my institution, I'm Rudolf Botha from Rand Afrikaans University. Our economics department is next year starting with a bridging course. Whether you have matric or grade 1 doesn't matter. You can enroll at Rand Afrikaans University for a certificate program in economic sciences through correspondence in English or Afrikaans. No discrimination. And if you do have matric and you pass this program, you get allowed into second year degree courses. There are accusations that we're going to lower our standards. It's ridiculous. We have prescribed books, we have contact sessions with the students, and we will maintain our standards. Does he think that this type of approach where we get to grips with the realities surrounding us and get out of this mode that we're part of the first world, we are to some extent, but we're also very much part of the third world, and we must bring the two together and unleash this creativity. Does he think this is something worthwhile?
Maybe I can respond in two ways. First of all, you mentioned Novak. I think it was E.F. Shoemaker that says economics does not start with goods, it starts with people, their organization and discipline. Without these three, all resources remain latent, untapped potential like the marvelous unlimited resources of Brazil. And so we have to look at the human potential. The other question that you referred to had to do with education. It's interesting to me that I speak in the universities of the world. I have asked to be a chancellor of a university. There are 38 nations with universities who want my material.
Wait, how can you be a chancellor of a university without a degree?
Well, that is the interesting thing, which relates to what you just said. I don't have the qualifications to enter university, but I have doctorates and other honors. You know, I don't think we need to go too much into theory. Theory is the language of the scholar, but pragmatism is the language of the leader.
Peter Daniels, you've actually touched on a few things. In South Africa at this time, we have pressures that the more successful people become, they become demonized. The role models are being accused, of self-empowerment and self-enrichment. And I'm a business leader. We're trying to move people en masse. It is becoming difficult. You're trying to avoid to be seen, to be high profile, to be in the newspapers and everything else, because suddenly you're not playing the role of a role model where people can look up to you and you can set an example for the younger people. How are we going to overcome that? Because the people that are role models now are being demonized. But also it is deliberate, on the other hand, that we pick a few people, create a small layer of middle-class people, and leave the masses behind.
Are you talking about when black folks make it to the top, the media literally brings them down?
It's in both sides. That the media builds them up to create just that little layer and create that discontent below the surface. And then, that creates that big discontent. And at a future date, we would definitely have another revolution. Thank you.
In responding to that, let me talk about discontent and turn it into inspirational dissatisfaction. I think it's very easy to criticize other people that are moving upwards. What we should do is admire them and trying to emulate what they are already doing. You see, good morals is good economics. And what we have to do is to have a morality within our economics to help someone else that is not as well off as what we are. That's what my book, How to Be Happy Though Rich, stands for. I would like to see how much I can give away in my lifetime and how many people I can help. And whenever we look at someone that has money, we always look at someone above us. I would like to suggest we look down on someone who has less and put our hand down and help them up.
You just touched on something I've always said in some of my presentations. I always say that, you go to these seminars or these conferences and all you see is male and pale, just white men. And I'm saying to every white man, if you want to save South Africa, bring up one woman, I don't care what color she is, to that conference. and bring up 2 black people to that conference. We're talking about saving South Africa now, not just saving our skins. But there's something I would also like to bring to your attention. Obviously, as you can see here, we also have differently abled people here. How do they make it in this fast-paced world where no one is even thinking about them? In fact, someone accused me of saying affirmative action, I just talk about blacks and women. What about differently abled people? How do they make it?
Well, you've posed about 3 questions
That's
all
right.
in one there. Let me maybe deal with 1 or 2 of them and try to round it off. You see, when we're talking about disabled people, let's think about Stephen Hawkins, who is probably the greatest mind since Newton. And he sits in a wheelchair and he is able to direct science around the world. You see, we mistake a physical person for a person that has a mind and has imagination and has dreams. And a person that is in a wheelchair, and bear in mind that I was paralyzed, so I understand what I'm talking about.
You were paralyzed?
I was paralyzed with meningitis. And so I understand how they feel. But don't let us put them aside. They have a mind, they have a brain, they have dreams. And if we could get the disabled people together with the empowerment they have in their brains, we could revolutionize the world economics.
Talk about the gentleman in Orange Farm who's built a school, who has ensured a differently abled person, differently abled gentleman in Orange Farm, made sure that a school was built, took children there, made sure that Eskom electrifies Orange Farm. So folk can do things. I really appreciate that comment. Anyone wants to ask Mr. Daniels a question here?
No, no questions so far.
Not questions so far. Anyone here? Question? There's a question up here. Pam, I didn't see you. She went to school with me, but I'm still 29.
Peter Daniels, I knew she was going to embarrass me. I'd just like to know how you are going to implement a training program in this country, other than giving us books that we can read, which some of us can, of course, read, but practical training and practical hands-on application of the concepts that are in your books.
One of the greatest PR people in the country.
In responding to that, let me say that you're probably putting the cart before the horse. I think, first of all, South Africa has to have a 25-year goals program. I think, secondly, they need to have some sort of affirmation that would indicate to people what they stand for. I would suggest a mission statement, both a working mission statement and a sloganized mission statement. Thirdly, what they need to do is to understand how to seduce money from the rest of the world. Now, having done that, I have made an offer to the government here of South Africa that I would pour all my material in, which has taken me 36 years to develop, and I do big seminars, some of them as many as 30,000 people at a time, that believe that their lives have been changed and enhanced and enriched financially as well as spiritually and mentally around the world. I've offered that material free of charge and given them the copyrights for 10 years. Secondly, I've offered my own personal services free of charge to do just that job. And I believe if they accept that, and if we can come together and I'm able to spend time with the people at the grassroots level, I can develop programs that can literally change their lives. Why? Because I've been there. I know what it's like to be impoverished. I know what it's like to go into someone else's house and look through the window to see what they're eating for a meal and understand that I don't have that. I know what it's like to have the police around your home and have your friends and your relatives put in jail. So I understand from that point of view. I come from poverty, I understand it, but I also understand how to create wealth, and I believe I can help them to do just that.
Boy, in that Giorgio Armani suit, I don't know if you ever were there. But there's another phrase that you use. You say, don't kill yourself, skill yourself. How can you not kill yourself in a country like this where now we're trying to move so fast to try and catch up?
Well, I think that was easily answerable in the first question that was asked and added to by a comment. and that is your greatest resources are the people. What we need to do is to dream. You see, people can take everything away from you, but they cannot take away your dreams. And so often what we expect is someone else to fulfill or provide the wherewithal for us to fulfill our dreams. I believe that Albert Schweitzer, before he died, was asked a very important question. He said, "What's wrong with modern man?" He said, "He simply does not think." And we have to think. We can't expect God to do for us what we are not prepared to do for ourselves.
Peter, you mentioned, rather your background is that of a bricklayer. I'm also from the housing industry, and I'm not sure if you are aware that through our reconstruction and development program, the government of national unity has committed itself to build 1 million houses over a period of 5 years.
Have they started?
Yes, well, we have gone quite far pertaining the finalization of the Housing Accord and the Housing White Paper that will probably start see real implementation early next year. But my question to you is, and through this program, government has also enhanced the concept of sweat equity. And I would like to know from you and through your international experience, how can South Africans grasp the reality of building happily families and sound neighborliness through housing?
Well, first of all, I think, again, you're putting the cart before the horse. I think what we've got to do is we've got to allow these people and encourage these people and inspire these people to get work so they can get money so that they can buy these houses and so that they can enjoy the fruits of their labor and enjoy a family lifestyle that is equitable to other people. And so I think that has to happen first. It's a wonderful thing to talk about 1 million houses, but we've got to start considering who will provide the funds for that. As I understand, we look at South Africa and Russia possess 90% of the world's strategic metals. I'm concerned that they've never got together to form a cartel to quadruple the price of these metals like an oil cartel to provide the funds to get the job done. I think those are the decisions that need to be made.
As someone who has managed to overcome the stereotypes, how would you motivate young women to do the same? Because they also have to challenge the stereotypes that they can't be entrepreneurs or anything like that. So.
Maybe if I could start from an earlier question that dealt with womanhood, that maybe we ought to have some women that are entrepreneurs and politicians and so on. One of the things that is happening in the Western world is that women are expecting men to put them into positions of power. Now, if we do that, what is going to happen is we're going to have women that are going to feel guilty in positions of power that they have not earned. And so in a political situation...
So you're saying women should seize power?
Women should earn power.
Yeah.
They should earn power. You see, in a political situation, women live longer than men, and therefore there are usually more women that vote.
We told them that.
And so women should vote women politicians into office. Now, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, one of the fascinating things that happens to me, whether it's in Asia or in Western countries, is that the majority of people that buy my material are women. And I've warned the men, watch out for the women, they're on the march.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Daniels, now I know why I like you. But as Margaret Thatcher says, if you want to know how to do a job, ask a man. If you want the job done, give it to a woman. When we come back, we'll talk about that. We are talking to Mr. Peter Daniels, millionaire through self-education. Why is motivation possible in a country like South Africa where uncertainty, change, challenges and violence seem to be the order of the day?
Well, of course, the word crisis has a double meaning in the Asiatic countries. It says danger and opportunity. Wherever there is danger, there is always opportunity. And I believe if you think you can or you can't, you're right. You see, wealth is not a thing, it's a thought. And we've been given to believe that wealth is something that we acquire rather than something that we earn.
I would like to ask Mr. Daniels about the disabled man. How can you be successful as a disabled man? Let's say you didn't achieve that better education like he does.
No, he does not have education. He taught himself.
Or he taught himself. Then, but maybe there were some people who were sponsoring him concerning financial. What about the disabled people? How can they be successful like him? Let's say someone who's on a wheelchair or walking on a crutch.
Who sponsored you? I think that's really what he's trying to find out. Someone should have paid for you. Many people in South Africa have the motivation but cannot afford to go to school.
Nobody paid for me. As a matter of fact, for 12 years after that incident, I had to reach up to touch bottom. I bought all of my own material, and what I couldn't buy, I went to the libraries to find out. You see, the first thing we have to do is to believe that we can do it. And you need to read biographies. I have read 4,600 biographies because they build up a vocabulary of overcoming incredible odds. And if you read at least one biography a week, you'll find that suddenly your mind will take on a different stance, and suddenly your dreams will start to kickstart, and finally your dreams will become reality.
Is Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich, one of your mentors or role models?
No, Napoleon Hill wrote a book, Think and Grow Rich, but he became very poor towards the end of his life because he made one of the great mistakes. He felt that writing about it meant that he could do it. And we have many people today running around talking about leadership that couldn't lead a group in silent prayer. You see, we do not need more teachers, we need more examples. And I've noticed even in the short time I've been in South Africa this visit, there's a lot of people running around that want to teach, but I want to meet people that want to do. That is the difference.
But there's one phrase that Napoleon Hill has that I always believe in, and it says, every adversity carries with it the seeds of greater benefit. We are going through adversity right now, so people like you, are they going to bring us the benefits that we need?
I think the quote was that Napoleon Hill said, every adversity has a seed or an equivalent of a greater benefit. And I believe that that is true, because you see, with every adversity, it means that we have a challenge, and we either rise to that challenge or we fall to that challenge. If we rise to that challenge, then our character and our resolve is strengthened, and I think that's what he meant by that.
We have young people here, and you obviously are talking a lot to young people, and you say they are future. Let's hear first from this young person.
I don't actually have a question for Felicia, but I just want to emphasize what Mr. Daniels has said. We actually suffer from, we actually want people to do things for ourselves in order to be successful. But the one thing that I liked what he said is, he said that he actually taught himself. He went out there and actually believed in himself that he can achieve things. I just want to tell people a short story that I have as well. I actually didn't have bursaries when I grew up, but I told myself that at the end of the day I'm going to achieve what I wanted, and I wanted to do engineering. I did electrical engineering in Cape Town without having a sponsor, without having money to go to Cape Town, but at the end of the day I did achieve my electrical engineering diploma.
Another contribution to affirmative action there, and you see, it works. I told you it works. Any question? Some young people here again.
Peter, but in some quarters you are referred as the disciple. As soon as you landed in South Africa, the twilight children,
these are the homeless children in South Africa.
And the homeless children and the rural people regard you as the Messiah. Are you truly that Messiah?
No, I don't believe I am, but I've been to see the homeless children. I have been in the streets. I have already been to the homes. I've nursed some of the babies, I've talked to some of the children, and in their eyes I see the hope of South Africa.
Mr. Daniels, well, I'm going to put myself as one of the marginalized youth of South Africa, meaning the lost generation. Concerning the lost generation of South Africa, how can you motivate it? I mean, the mechanism you can use, because they were believing that after the government of national unity, it will be running banknotes, or it will happen that everything will be sort of possible for them. So, well, being a bricklayer and end up being a millionaire, it's quite sort of a story which they can't fall for it. That's, well, how can I go and make mud and sort of and build houses and then end up being a millionaire? Well, being a successful person as you, how can you try to inject maybe some mechanism to them? What type of a mechanism? What do they need so that they can achieve?
Well, I think first of all we need to understand that motivation cannot be caught like a common cold. You see, so often we hang around people that are motivated and we think that somehow we'll catch it like a cold. You cannot motivate people that don't want to be motivated. It doesn't matter what country you're in or how wealthy or how poor a country is, you will always find a percentage of people that don't want to be motivated and want someone else to look after them. I think it was Alfred Adler, the great Austrian psychiatrist, that understood this when he spoke of what he called the life lie of the neurotic. And he said it is the categorical demand of the patient's lifespan that he or she should fail by blaming their problems on someone else and thus be free from responsibility. I think the first essential ingredient of motivation is accepting responsibility for your own life, and then understanding that motivation comes with a sense of the future, not the past. I know what has happened in South Africa. I'm amazed at the transition. The whole world is looking towards you. They've seen what has happened in the past. They've seen what is happening at the moment, but they want to see what you're going to do with the future. And motivation always comes with a sense of the future.
Your son here, how does this man inspire you? That's your father. Where have you gone and what have you gained from him?
My father and I are just good friends. We've been working together in business opportunities ever since I left school. And so we have a very strong and a very unusual relationship. And I'm just pleased to be here with him. He's been here a number of times. And each time he's been here, he's come back and said, "You must go to Africa." And he said, "Next time I go, you must come with me." And I could see that he had a genuine heart for the people. And that's why I'm here now.
Why do you say some leaders cannot even lead in silent prayer? But you also said that leaders need ethos, pathos, and logos. What do you mean by that?
Ethos is a moral character, the source of his or her ability to persuade. Pathos is understanding the intellectual side of that leadership. And the final one, of course, is persuasion. And a leader needs all of those three things, but we must understand the difference between a leader and a mere power holder. All leaders are actual or potential power holders, but not all power holders are leaders.
A leader's visionary, visionary people, is that what you're saying?
A leader needs to be visionary, but they also need to be focused. And they also need, I believe, for the long term, because the only real measure of value is permanence, they need to have a heart for the people they're leading.
Thank you. Thank you, Felicia. I'm from Soweto Chamber of Commerce, and I'm in business of consulting. My question basically will address the business itself than the motivation, because I see the motivation, it's a long term. But we're talking today about those more than 4 million people deposited in that area, where they have no infrastructure, where everything they get, they have to go to town. And even if you can give them all the books, there'll be no motivation that is done there. They still need the hands-on. I'm trying to find out from yourself, addressing you as a business person, not based on your motivation books, to say what are the possibilities from your side, where you can invest in that particular place. There are people there. where you can go there without being escorted. And then from thereafter, so where people they learn by doing things on the place, and also setting a precedent to other people or motivate other people in other countries to come in that area in terms of investment.
Okay.
I would respond to that in this way. The first thing that you need to do, I believe, is to have a look at a role model. The role model would have to be South Korea. In 1956, the poorest nation on the face of the earth, the poorest per capita income in the world. They didn't have the enormous help that South Africa is getting now. They didn't have the assistance and the technology that you have. And it was South Korea. In 1956, the poorest nation on the face of the earth is the greatest economic miracle this century. Not Japan, South Korea. And you need to look at what they did with their people of one mind, determined to make their nation great. I believe that Soweto, the size of Singapore in population, and as we look at Singapore with no water, no minerals, no opportunity of any kind, they turn that nation state into one of the wealthiest nation states in the world today, and a port busier even than Rotterdam. I think the bottom line is, sir, if you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Talking about Singapore, they say they invest so much in training of human resources, and we in South Africa invest only 0.36%. So maybe we need to start thinking about investing in people skills in South Africa.
Felicia, thanks for this opportunity. I just am a little concerned. I feel we South Africans are running a risk of having a self-pity on ourselves simply because of the history of our past. But I think it's about time for us to honestly realize that all of us have a potential. Even that little boy running up and down the street, sleeping in the street, that little boy has an ambition of who he would love to be. So we South Africans, it's about time we try and think and ask outsiders like Mr. Daniels to help us in what we are doing for ourselves.
But when people show that confidence in our country, we say they've lost Ubuntu, we say that they're arrogant. What do we do? People decide to sit back.
I'm not sure which people you are referring to, Felicia. I mean,
don't worry, right here. They say I'm arrogant instead of confident.
Well, the tendency is that assertive people who really try to make things better for them. I mean, you are like all of us, you've been disadvantaged, but you managed to get to where you are. We must try. I come from a very disadvantaged background myself. I haven't made it. I'd love to be successful one way or another, but let us do things for ourselves and then expect other people to come and help us in what we're doing for ourselves.
Thank you. Yeah, she's right. Let's stop waiting for things to happen. Let's stop watching things happen, and let's make things happen.
Hi, Mr. Daniels. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and thank you, Felicia. The one thing that is very disturbing in our country is that, as our sister has said, handouts. We're always expecting handouts. We need to get out there and to do something for ourselves. And I think some of the things that you have said to us can motivate us and to help us build a better society, build our communities. But we also need the grounding. We need to know how to start doing this. And I would like to know from you, how would we be able to do this kind of thing?
First of all, in responding to that, let me give you my definition of success. Success is a willingness to bear pain. To bear pain, not to be a pain, but to bear pain. And so often we stay in the comfort zone and we think we're going to win in the comfort zone. You will not win in the comfort zone. Secondly, let me give you a simple formula that I struggled with and came to grips with as a young man. 4 very simple questions. Question number 1, What age have you set yourself to reach your full potential that God might maximize your life? Question number 2, could you tell me in 50 pages or more what your full potential is in every area of your life? Question number 3, accepting your full potential as 100%, what percentage rating would you give yourself right now? Question number 4, accepting the deficiency between the 2 scores, what plans are you going to make to take up the shortfall and when?
It's about goal setting, and when we come back, we'd like some solutions and talk about how do we set goals for ourselves. Solutions, that's what we need now. How do we set goals for ourselves? Goal setting, Mr. Daniels?
Well, first of all, I think you need to define your goal. If you haven't got a goal, make finding a goal your goal.
Is it important to put it in writing?
It's very important to put it in writing. As a matter of fact, in 1954, the students at Yale University in economics, they were asked if they had any written financial goals. There were only 3% of the class that had written financial goals. In 1974, 20 years later, they went back and checked the class of 1954 and found that the 3% who were not the best students had more money together than the whole rest of the 97% in comparison. So yes, it's very important to put your goals in writing with deadlines for its attainment.
So you're saying 1 year, 3 years, 5 years?
I would like to suggest that you put together a lifetime goal, because when you finally do expire, whatever you've done in your lifetime, that's what you've transferred your life for. And if you want to create empires, then you have to devote your whole life to it, as your leader, President Nelson Mandela, did.
Thank you, Felicia. Mr. Daniels, having observed the level of our lives in this country, would you say we have the potential to face a challenge that lies ahead? Or do we have enough skills in this country to face a challenge, or we should import skilled people from overseas?
I think I would answer that in 2 ways. First of all, I think you have the potential. Secondly, you may have to import some skills. But whatever happens, don't think that you are the worst off of any country in the world. Think of the Philippines. 11-year-old girls on Smoky Mountain selling their bodies for a slice of bread. You are much above them, so you are on the precipice for change and the precipice for greatness.
You know, someone once said that the problem in South Africa is not as overwhelming. If you look at India with 800 million people, and in South Africa 40 million people, you can do something in South Africa. It just takes leadership, as you say, and what?
Leadership, not brinkmanship. See, leadership means that you have to make decisions, and sometimes make the hard decisions. But leadership is quite different from brinkmanship, who tries to sit on the edge and please everyone. You're not going to please all the people all of the time. I think it was Abraham Lincoln said, you may please some of the people some of the time, and all the people some of the time, but you never please all the people all of the time.
But that's what many people feel with this new government of national unity, that they're trying to please all the people, and literally no one is being pleased.
Well, if you believe that is possible, then you better believe in fairy stories, because that's just not possible. You have to take a step at a time, and I believe the people in South Africa are intelligent enough to understand that.
Mr. Daniels, coming from a poor biographical background as you do, I realize you've achieved inner peace. How did you manage to become assertive without being aggressive, and still come back and lead people, show people the way without holding grudges against anybody else who might have sinned you?
Well, I came to Christ on May the 25th, 1959, and any bitterness and anger I had as an angry young man was removed at that point. Also, I made a commitment in my life that I was not going to lose my family. You've seen my son on the program. We have never raised our voice to one another. Our children are very close to us. I have 8 grandchildren who think I'm the 4th member of the Trinity. So we have kept our family together. My wife and I have been married for 41 years because that is our inner strength. And so it's important to me for my faith and my family to be in balance with my success.
One of the problems, Peter, I'd like to just maybe you comment on is this, is that we have some wonderful role models, but they have not been exposed yet. But on the other side, some of the role models that we've had that I'm disturbed about in our country in South Africa is a statement he made one evening when he said that people who want out burn out. And a lot of our white business have been vacillating and have not got committed to the new South Africa.
That's true.
And some of them have wanted to get out the country if things don't look too good for them. And the time has come for us to look at role models who are committed to this country.
Earlier in the program, you did touch on some of the things that you want to do. He talked about role models who are committed to this country. And you are definitely one. You sound like one. What do you plan to bring back?
Well, as a foreigner and someone from another country, thankfully not from the United States, not that I have any problems with the Americans, I think they've been very benevolent to the rest of the world. But I believe what I can bring into the country and offer to the people of South Africa free of charge. I will not allow anyone to pay my hotel bills or pay my air flights or give me an honorarium, as the information that I have gained serving with some of the biggest corporate giants in history, becoming successful myself, and I would like to interact and be involved and provide all my copyrights, which are very, very valuable. For instance, I can write a best-selling book in 16 hours, all longhand without any reference material and no corrections, and in the medium to long term, it's worth $5 million when I finish. So I have 10 of these plus major programs where we have students almost going to the 4 corners of the earth, and all of this material, I'm prepared to make it free of charge, no copyrights, to the government and the people of South Africa.
The Institute of Entrepreneurship?
The Institute of Entrepreneurship is the World Center for Entrepreneurial Studies.
You're going to set up one in South Africa?
It's quite different. Now, you need to understand the difference. It's not a university. A university says, you come to where we are in the time frame that we tell you, and we'll teach you what we think you ought to know. You don't have the time for that. What we do in the World Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, we go anywhere in the world where we are invited, in the time frame that they have available, and we teach them what they want to know. I don't believe you need to study for 6 years to be a business leader. When they come out of Harvard, very often they're driving taxi cabs. And so we want to teach them something that will work the next day, and like the formula I gave you just a few minutes ago, that will work this afternoon.
Last words for South Africa?
Define your goal, set out your strategy, plan out your problems, build them reserves, relate to time frames, create a master plan to get the job done, and do it today.